You know, I am a nice person. I really am. I'm kind, I'm sweet, I'm gentle, and loving, and lovable, and modest. But like everyone else, I have a nasty streak inside me too. Usually that nasty streak is repressed. But every so often somebody pushes the wrong button and that nasty streak comes out. It happens on an average every 45, 50 years, but it happens. So it happened just recently. A publisher in Latin America sent me a book for review. And then follow that up with a phone call. The book is called La Biblia Condensada, the condensed Bible. And what the publicist said on the phone was, this is an age in which people are simply too busy to read the whole Bible or any other ancient book. And so what we have done, she said, is put out a condensed version. We cut out all the weird stuff, the stuff that is no longer relevant, she said, and publish that part of the Bible that is still worth reading. At first, I was flattered to get a book, and even more, to get the phone call. But then, I opened the book. Out of the 50 chapters of Genesis, there were only 35. Out of the 40 chapters that make up the book of Exodus, only 15. And of the 26 chapters that constitute the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, they left only 2. Chapter 19 and chapter 25. That got me mad, because I don't like to see classics treated this way. I don't think that a 2-page summary of the plot is the same as reading a play by Shakespeare. The effort involved in working through the play is as essential as the experience. It means as much as knowing the plot itself. And so I was not happy with the condensed Bible, La Biblia Condensada. So what I did was I write a condensed review. It consisted of the title, the name of the author, the name of the publisher, the city and state and year of publication, the number of pages, and the price. And then just one sentence. This condensed Bible is not worth buying. For some reason, she didn't like it. But that was my reaction to a tendency of which this is only one example. The tendency in our culture is to summarize and to simplify, is as you have fast food restaurants, so you can have fast read books. And obviously, we was going in Israel, people only have 15 seconds for you to explain to them the real thing in a TikTok, and then they create their opinions. So I felt bad for the poor book of Leviticus that got cut down from 26 chapters to just 2. I felt especially sorry for the first 2 parshiot, the ones that deal in detail with the sacrifices that were cut out completely. The assumption of the editors of this condensed Bible is that these parshiot are only of interest to priests, to Kohanim, or to butchers, that no one else would want to bother reading them. And so I want to say a kind word today on behalf of the book of Vayikra, and especially on behalf of the Parshas of the week. I know that's not easy to do, but how shall we understand in our days the book? The easy thing to do is to understand the historical context, to say that in the ancient world, people could not conceive of worshiping the gods in any other way than by bringing them food. And so the Torah went along. Was pedagogically necessary at the stage of human development to have animal sacrifices. That's one way to see it. But what does it mean to us who live here and now? So let me look at these sacrifices and see if they contain any lesson for us today. if you follow the Torah reading, you notice that there are basically 4 kinds of sacrifices that are discussed. The first one is the Korban Olah, the complete offering, literally that which goes up. Nothing of this sacrifice went to the Kohen, to the priest. All of it went up in smoke. What was the point of that? I think it came to teach us the painful but necessary lesson that ultimately all that we have and all that we are is not really permanently ours. When you bring a Korban Olah, you are saying to God, here I am completely committed, all I have and all I am really belongs to you, not to me. And I realize that. There is no bargaining in this kind of sacrifice. There is no, if I give you an animal, will you give me prosperity? There is no, if I daven mincha, will you bring me happiness? There is no, if I donate tzedakah, will you protect me? There is no bargaining of any kind. Just a declaration. It is what I have, and I give it all to you. Do we need to hear that lesson, that what we have is not really ultimately ours? I think we do. Let me give you just one example of why. I once overheard a conversation between 2 people. The first one said, I hear that he was ungestoppt. You know what ungestoppt is? That he was very wealthy. The second one said, yeah, I heard that too. The first one said, I wonder how much he left. And the second one said, I know exactly how much he left. And the first side said one, really? And the second said, yes. He left all of it. That is what the Korban Olah teaches. Such an outdated idea, or is it not one of which we need to remind ourselves many times in our lives until we finally begin to comprehend, or until it finally sinks in? The second sacrifice was the Korban Mincha, the sacrifice of flour. Flour was something simple, accessible, inexpensive. If you couldn't afford to bring meat, if you couldn't afford to bring a cow or an ox or even a bird, you could bring flour. And you did not need to feel embarrassed or ashamed when you did, because the Torah calls the flour offering holy, just as it calls all the other kinds of gifts. The lesson is that everyone can serve God at his or her financial level. And the lesson that there is always something that you can give, no matter how poor you may be. I have been watching the gifts in the last few months in response to a letter that we sent the congregation to create a fund to sustain the level of security that we have in Beit Torah. And I was moved by the number of gifts we have received in response. I'm even more moved by the quality of the gifts. Some of them are really very, very large. And some of them are heroic. They really are. One person came to my office and said, I don't have much, but you're taking so much care of my granddaughter that it means a lot to me. It really does. Will it be all right if I gave $10 a month to the campaign? And I said it sure would. For that to me is a holy gift. That is the Korban Mincha. Is this idea outdated? This idea that it makes no difference if you have a lot and give a lot, or if you have a little and give a little, provided that your intention is for the sake of heaven? I don't think it is. Do you? In an age when people are rated and valued according to how much they have and according to how much they can give, is this idea that it is not the size of the gifts that count? Is this idea not one that we need to hear and pay attention to? I think it is. The third kind of offering was the chatat, the sin of offering. A person put his hands on the head of an animal and said, I have sinned. And he spelled out the sin. And the animal was turned over to the Kohen, to the priest, and slaughtered. The symbolism is as obvious as it could have been. It should have been me who was sacrificed. The animal is only my substitute. The lesson is that sin is real. Sin is serious. And therefore, sin has to be expiated. It has to be paid for. And when it is, then the person is clean and pure again. No one could make you bring a chatat. The court could not find you a chatat. It had to be your decision. You had to be able to say, I did it and I was wrong and I am sorry. I must tell you that I take the idea of the korban chatat a lot more seriously than I used to. For two reasons. One is that all of us need some way, some concrete, physical, real way in which to unburden ourselves of the sense of guilt that otherwise weights us down and complicates our ability to live in peace. Every doctor who makes a mistake and has no one with whom he can share how he feels about it, every lawyer, every person who does something wrong and has to suppress that knowledge inside for fear that if he tells he will be rebuked or chastised or judged harshly, every one of us wishes we had what they had then. Every one of us wishes we had some way, some place, some ritual that would enable us to admit that we did wrong. Let me tell you a personal story. Some of you may know that I had a very deep, good relationship with the archbishops of Buenos Aires. Very good. We traveled to Rome and to Jerusalem many times. He was really instrumental in my spiritual growth, and we wrote a book, and we had a TV show, whatever. And, you know, we traveled all over Argentina to present books in different universities, and when they gave us the key of the city, and they gave us this and that, and yes, but what I enjoy is going with him to the restaurant after and speak. And we spoke on, I think, a very high level with a lot of openness. And I remember asking him, I'm glad this part is not being live streamed, but I remember asking him, you really believe that the Virgin Mary was virgin? Imagine, he has a tzalem, a huge tzalem, the keeper, the ganze shtick, but he's my friend. Well, you know, it's more a symbolic virginity. She was naive, she was pure, she was nice, she was kind. It's not that she was a virgin sexually. And he said, you also have a shtick there that Sarah conceived with Hava in the menstruation. And I said, yeah, it's the same story. And I say, you really believe, I say to him, that somebody can go to a booth, said, I made a mistake, go and pray 3 Aves Maria, Mary, Evan, saying, no, but I believe that people need to speak. That people need to say. And somebody needs to listen to what they did wrong. So I start looking at the booth with much more respect. Not that I believe that when you go there, the priest tell you 3 Ave Marias and you are forgiven. That's not the point. The point is that idea of chatat that would enable us to get rid of the guilt and to feel purged, clean, and able to live afresh, as they had in the Korban Chatat then. I think we envy them for having such a device. And the second reason why I take the idea of the Korban Chatat a lot more seriously than I used to is because the tendency in our culture has been to move from understanding bad deeds as sin to understanding them as sickness. And perhaps the pendulum has swung too far. I'll give you some random example. When people shoot in the universities, the first reaction is, he was sick. When people killed in Moscow, in a stadium, they were sick. Hamas, who raped, they were sick. They gave them a pill. So if they are sick, they are never guilty, they are never evil, they never did nothing wrong because they are sick. So what's the line between sin and evil, sin and wrong? A guy killed 30 Palestinians when they were praying in Hebron. He was sick. Now, in each of these cases, a case can be made that there may have been a measure of illness. I understand that. But still there has to be some limits. At some point, sin is not to be subsumed under the rubric of sickness. At some point, sin is sin. At some point, a person has to be able to say, I did wrong and I am sorry. That is what the Korban Hatat did. In view of what has happened in recent years, in USA, in Russia, in Israel, Korban Hatat is not out of date. Not out of date at all. And the fourth or final Korban sacrifice is Korban Todah, the thanksgiving offering. This is the one that was brought when a child was born, when a significant milestone was reached, when you had a simcha, and this one was offered differently. Unlike the others, this one was offered up on the altar and then eaten by the person who brought it together with his family and together with the Kohen. It was eaten at a meal of thanksgiving, and there was singing at the meal. And perhaps there was Torah spoken at the meal. And everyone was there, felt as if they were a guest at God's table at the meal. It was a simcha, and like every Jewish simcha, it was shared. A Jew never celebrates by himself. These are the four kinds of sacrifices: the Korban Olah, which taught us that all we are and all we have belongs to God and is given to us; the Korban Mincha, which taught us that it's not the amount that you give, but the spirit with which you give; the Korban Hatat, which taught us that sin is real, but that cleansing and atonement is possible; and the Korban Todah, which taught us to celebrate and to share when we have a simcha. Are these four kinds of sacrifices simply blood and guts? Are these only vestige of a primitive cult to be skipped over or left out from La Biblia Condensada, our condensed Bible? Or are they not instead four lessons that we need to have on how to live? I think so. The publisher of the Concise Bible wasn't happy with my answer, but I am. Shabbat Shalom.